Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. My name is Justice, and we are Vida. We are a life, health, and wellness leadership and career coaching company. And what I do here in the company is I'm a relationship strategist. So when you're ready to have a conversation with someone on our team to get you paired up with the coach for you, you'll end up on someone on my team's calendar, and we have a half-hour call where we ask you deeper questions to know more about you, what you're currently going through, and what your ultimate goals are. And then hopefully at the end of that half hour, we'll be able to pair you up with the coach based off of what you said you need. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and drop my calendar link right now because it is first come, first serve. So if anyone has anything they want to get off their chest already, you can go ahead and schedule a time with me. And just so you know, anybody coming to us from a webinar, you do get your first session free. So something to consider when you are budgeting. So with that being said, today we are joined by Coach Robbi, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Justice. So I want to share a little snapshot of who I am and how I engage with the world. I serve as a career and life coach with Vida. I have had tens of positions across all the major sectors: corporate, academia, nonprofit, also owned my own businesses. I'm a sociologist by training, so my 2 degrees, undergrad and master's, is in sociology. I also serve as a coach and mentor with foster teens and young adults. And on the fun side, because life isn't all about work and contribution, even though I have fun with all the work that I do, you'll see me in the gym doing Zumba, getting my Zumba on 4 times a week. I'm also a fiber artist, am a yarn addict, love it. Big screen movie fan, avid reader. I'm crazy curious. I own my creativity. I challenge myself daily to stay open to the possibilities. And overall, I just really, really love supporting individuals who are going through the career transition process. So let's dive in. So in the chat, Justice has already asked you to share your location, where you are. But I would also like to ask you to share, if you will, if you feel so inclined, to share, where are you in this process? Are you just kind of considering? I know it's the 10 best big questions to ask when you're considering a career transition, but some of you may already be in the midst of a transition. So are you considering it? Are you kind of at a crossroads, standing at a precipice? Or are you actually into the process and just trying to figure out how to navigate it? So I would love for you to share that in the chat. Are you considering or in process, as well as your location? And then as far as your work life phase, like, where are you? Are you early career? And I would say, maybe recently graduated to about 3 to 5 years, mid-career, mid-career. You'll decide what mid-career, or seasoned, been here for a while. And if that's the case, like, how many career transitions have you actually experienced? Because I told you, I've had tens of positions. So I kind of consider myself transition queen, which is why I love this topic. But I'd be curious to hear, where are you along, in your work life phase? And how many career transitions have you experienced up to this point? When have you been at a crossroads and wanted to kind of figure out what's next? So I'm curious. So thank you for those who decide to share that. I really appreciate that, because I consider everything as an experiment. I'm always wanting to learn, and this isn't like an interactive kind of situation. And my jam is like interacting in person, and I want to hear and feel and see your, gestures and body language and etc. And we're not able to do that. So I would really love for you to share as much as you can in the chat. That would be awesome. All right, so let's move forward. So our agenda here is we talk about these 10 big questions and ask, like, when you're considering a career transition, the questions are kind of ordered, first of all, about knowing your motivation, knowing yourself, knowing what challenges you, knowing what your just right is. And what I mean by that is the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? We all know that, right? Too hot, too cold, just right. Looking for something that's just right, that like fits who we are, how we're wired, what we want, what we need, how we blossom, etc. So that's what I'm talking about, knowing what that just right is for you. And that takes takes going through a process and asking several questions. We'll talk about some tips to how to help you uncover your answers. We'll do a little wrap up, and then there'll be questions at the end. So again, as we move through the process, absolutely feel free to share based on the questions that I'm asking, any follow-up questions. If you think about a question or a comment or something that you want to ask, at the very end, we'll have some time set aside for that purpose. So we'll be able to address that. All right. So first, I want to share that I believe that it's important for us to figure out our who, what, and why, then determine our where, when, and how. So the who, what, and why represents a lot of these questions that we're going to be talking about, these 10 questions that I feel are really big questions. And the question has been asked to me, where did these questions come from? How did you decide on these particular 10? Well, these are just a few of many that we can ask ourselves when we find ourselves at a career crossroads. And so I've worked with individuals from a variety of backgrounds and circumstances, and these are the questions that seem to rise to the top when we're trying to really help them shift and see themselves and what they want differently. A lot of people will say, I don't know what I want, but I think you do. I think we all do, but there are just some blocks, things that are happening that are preventing us from really owning that, right? So these questions rise to the top. So the goal here is, as you move through this process, to approach it smarter versus harder, because we can certainly work harder, way too hard in this process. People, oh, looking for a job. It can be difficult and challenging, but I'd like to work smart versus hard. Shorter versus longer. A lot of clients will say, well, how long is this going to take? And I use a car analogy when I'm talking about coaching, and I'll say, we're in the car, you have the steering wheel, you have control of the brake and the accelerator, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I'm saying, okay, client, ideal client, where are we headed? What do you want me to put in the GPS? And so clients can say anything from I have no idea to I know, but I'm not quite sure where to start. So keeping with that analogy, you as a client would set the cruise control, or as someone who's going through this process, you determine how short or long that process is going to be. So shorter versus longer, empowered versus paralyzed. A lot of individuals get paralyzed during this process and they just don't know where to shift and where to go. So the idea here is to address some of these questions to move you from paralyzed to feeling more empowered. And then also to be more intentional versus kind of random and by chance. Because a lot of times we have been trained, as far as the traditional approach to exploring a career transition, is to go to job engines and just fill out a whole bunch of applications, and I worked really hard, I did all of this, and that's more random. It's like you're shooting an arrow into a black space, into a black hole, as opposed to allowing a bullseye to appear, so you know exactly when you pull the arrow back, you know where you're hitting the target. So being more intentional versus being random. So we're going to be focusing with these questions on the who, the what, and the why. So the very first question is, what is my motivation to change my situation now? So here's a follow-up question to that I want to ask. Some clients are running away from something when they decide to take on a career transition, move through that process. What are you running away from? Or are you running towards something or moving towards something? And here's the thing. If you're running away from something in your current position, if you don't address it and challenge it, it'll probably chase you to the next position and the next position and the next position until you become very aware of what you're running from and you challenge it and face it. It's kind of like slay it and then move on to the next obstacle. So I think that's a great question to keep in mind as a follow-up question. We're talking about what's your motivation to change your situation now? There's so many reasons to consider a career shift. Some are out of our control. If there's a firing or there's a layoff or maybe some other reason, most of our reasons for shifting and wanting to move through a career transition has to do with us. I mean, it's in our control. There's something maybe we're not comfortable with, we don't like, we want to change, we want to shift. And so right now, a prompt in the chat, I would encourage you to share, what do you think is your motivation for either considering a career transition right now? Because I asked you earlier in the chat to say if you're considering it or if you're in the midst of it. So what would you say is your motivation right now to move through this process? What is it that's kind of putting a little heat under you to get you to say, okay, it's time for me to switch, it's time for me to move, it's time for me to change, etc. So I think this is a very big question. And here's the thing, when your motivation to change is about you showing up authentically and asking for what you really want, and I say what you really want because some people say, well, I want this. And as you do a little bit of exploration, it's like, maybe that's not what I really wanted. What do you really, and I like to say 3, what do you really, really, really want, right? You've got all the energy that you need to propel yourself in a new direction. But again, I said, when your motivation to change is about showing up authentically and asking for what you really want, you've got all the energy that you need to propel yourself in a new direction. Let's move on. Question 2, what lights me up? So I have here my definition of natural brilliance. And I consider this kind of like your unique constellation of strengths, talents, abilities, skills, experience, what you offer as value, your preferences, even your flavor, right? All of that comes together to make you you. So what lights you up when all of those come together? When was the last time you were so engaged in work or in an activity that hours passed by like minutes, minutes passed by like seconds? Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called this flow, and he was the first to coin the term, identify it, and research it. And flow is like that optimal state of consciousness where we perform at our best while enjoying the moment. If you notice when you're in flow, there's no fear. Fear and flow don't exist at the same time. So to really get into the flow, like really understanding what it is that lights you up. So a lot of times with clients who feel kind of stuck, well, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what lights me up. I don't know what I'm interested in, etc. So I encourage them to compile a list of passions. And if passions sends you running down the street, like, I'm tired of hearing about passion, finding your passion, then think about what you're curious about, what you're interested in. Think about what you're naturally drawn to. Think about what you watch, what you read, when you're on social media, what you're drawn to, what you find interesting. So there's an exercise that I'll have clients go through where they kind of list all of that, forget about the job for a few minutes and just list their passions, their curiosities, what they're interested in. When was, times when they had fun, when they were really enjoying their work, times when they were definitely in the flow, just really helping you to figure out what lights you up. What puts you in this state of flow? Let's move on. Come on. There we are. What am I great at? So what am I great at and what lights me up are two different things, because we can be great at something, but it may not necessarily like light us up all the time, right? So when we're talking about what you're great at, I find that we don't often recognize and verbalize our greatness. We have a hard time with that. We've internalized through conditioning that this is arrogant, like, but who's going to toot your horn? Who's going to advocate for you? I don't have a line standing outside my door with people just waiting to say how amazing I am and how great I am. And in an interview, when you're asked that, that's typically a challenge for some people. Not everyone, but for some. So what are you great at? You've got to know that you're competent, know that you're capable, and that you deserve to ask for and get what you want. For example, if you find yourself where you've applied for a position and you're there, and this is a, a place where you are in your career transition process, you're looking at them to see if they're the right fit just as much as they're seeing if you're the right fit. And a lot of times when we go into these kind of situations, we think of the power dynamic as they're the ones who have the power here. And I beg to differ. I say when you go in there, make that power, so you're right there. You got power too. And you get to decide if this is where you want to be or not. But then there's a lot of other things, other questions that we're going to talk about that get you set and ready for that so that you're clear and you know what that is. So try noting, here's something that I often encourage, an exercise I'll encourage clients to do who, excuse me, feel like they have some challenges around really embracing what their greatness is and what they're great at. I'll encourage them to do this exercise where they get a pack of sticky notes. And what they do is they note their individual accomplishments. Individual accomplishments, each individual accomplishment gets a sticky note. And I tell them to really have fun with it and go back to the time when you were a kiddie pop. You know, in school, we got stars for stuff and we got recognized for different things when we were a little person, and bring it from kiddie pop all the way up to current day. And so you think about when you graduated from high school, when you graduated from college, certifications, other different things that you did. You can take this exercise and make it as big as you want and find a wall, something that you're going to see often, and slap these sticky notes on there. If it made you feel good and confident, let's talk about what other people thought. If it made you feel good and made you feel confident, it deserves a sticky note. Slap it up on the wall. And then you could take this a step further and you can snap a picture of it and just keep it, where you can go back and glance at this every so often if you need that little boost. Just say, see, look at this. I accomplished this, I accomplished that, etc. So what am I great at? Let's move on. What are my non-negotiables? So this nice little word cloud here is actually a representation of the over 400 values that are on Steve Pavlina's website. So you can easily find that. Go to Google, type in Steve Pavlina, Pavlina, values, and it'll come up. So this oftentimes is too much for people to process. It's like, oh my gosh, when I've used this in workshops, this is so many. Because when we start talking about values, we say there's so many that resonate. And by the time you finish trying to highlight or check or circle those that really resonate with you, you've got like a list of 30. And we're trying to help you narrow what are your non-negotiables. Those things that you're like, they really define what is important to you. So we're basically talking about values. So you want to get clear about what you value, know where to direct your focus. It helps you to make decisions. I've been talking to clients this week about, I'm not sure what I want to do and where I am, and I'm kind of at a crossroads and I got so many interests and I don't know what to do. It's like, once you get clearer about your values and a few other things, it helps you to make those decisions, because then you can prioritize. Like if money, when we talk about values, for example, honesty or achievement, or you think about those things that you value and then prioritize them, they help you to be able to make decisions. So maybe an opportunity comes up, right? And everyone thinks this is a great opportunity. Maybe it's not the right opportunity for you right now. And to know that and to be able to say that is quite powerful, as opposed to feeling the pressure to do it because it's kind of or it's been said that this is a great opportunity. But when you know what your non-negotiables are, it helps you to be able to make these decisions. So here's the secondary question that falls under this: what are my non-negotiables? Are my values reflected in my career transition choices? As you're making choices along the way, are your values reflected in these choices? And take it a step further. Are your values reflected in your everyday life? So really think about that. So the fourth question, what are my non-negotiables? Let's move on. The next question is, what is my work print? So let me share my definition when I'm saying work print. What do I mean by this? It's a set of variables that are unique to you that have influenced every step of your work journey. It's your work philosophy, like your beliefs about work, your motivation drivers, your perceptions about work and your relationship with work, the people, places, and things that have influenced your belief about work, success, money, your work style, your preferences, a combination of the biological, the psychological, the social, the cultural, the economic, the political pressures that inform your current work-life position. Now, I know that's a lot because there's a lot that goes into it. And a lot of times I don't think we think about that. We just think we're kind of going through the process. You know, we start out as professionals in the workforce once we get our education, whatever that is, whether we start early or right out of high school or after college or whatever, and we kind of make decisions along the way. We come to crossroads, we make decisions, we move forward. But what's influencing that? And this is where the work print comes in, where you're thinking about your work history, but just not generally speaking, you're taking a deeper dive to really explore what have been the patterns. So you're identifying patterns that serve as clues to uncover your strengths, your natural talents, your skills, abilities, etc. You're identifying specific information that's going to help you kick to the curb anything that's been holding you back up to this point. It may have worked before, maybe it doesn't work now. Maybe it hasn't ever worked and we just kind of been thinking it has, right? More aware of your beliefs and behaviors that have worked in your favor to propel you forward. So this can be a little bit of a long process. It can take a little bit of time. And I've written up a work print exercise where I encourage folks to kind of grab a journal and really just start. The very first job that you had where you exchanged your either services or a product for compensation. First time you got money, it could have been a lemonade stand that you had when you were 10 years old, right? So it's important to think about this and just kind of come forward with the different positions that you've had. And when you come to a crossroads, how have you made a decision? What has influenced that? What has influenced your choices? How you even go about the process, all of that. So that's what I mean when I talk about this work print. So you're going to write it out and go back to your first work experience. And again, there's a lot to decode here. Again, productive versus unproductive patterns, realizations, etc. So number 5, what is my work print? Let's move on. Number 6, what are my thoughts about work, success, and money? So this one is always interesting because, well, first of all, let me ask a follow-up question. Are your thoughts about work, success, and money limiting you or liberating you? So a lot of times what I'll do when I'm working with a client early on is ask them, let's play a little word association exercise. And I'll say, okay, when I say a word, I want you to think about words, phrases, experiences, whatever comes up for you when I say this word. So I start with the word work. So when I say work, what does work equal? You get all kinds of answers. You know, it's performing, it's heavy, it's boring, it's a number of different things. There's a reason why you believe what you do or why you have the thoughts that you do about work, about success, about money. Success, I'll often ask individuals to define what is success for you. Sometimes they'll come up with a general definition of success that's clearly what we've been taught and conditioned to believe success is. So I challenge them to think a little bit deeper. And the interesting thing, sometimes I'll ask clients who are going through this process, do you consider yourself successful? And some of them will say no. And they've been on this path, doing things, completing education, what have you. I have a young client who's finished law school and she doesn't consider herself successful because she says that's not what she really wanted to do. So when you start thinking about that, it puts it in a different light. When you start thinking about, again, your thoughts and beliefs and stories around work, success, and then money, same thing. Money is a really trippy one, right? We all have a relationship with work, a relationship with success, a relationship with money. How healthy are those relationships? And this word association exercise is really powerful. But what you can do is just write out the word work at the top of a sheet of paper and just really think about, when I think about work, what comes to mind? What are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? What are the stories that I tell around work? Separate sheet for success, separate sheet for money. And then take this a step further and think about your family of origin, mom, dad, maybe caregiver. What did they think about these? What did they think about work, success, and money? Parents don't typically sit us down and say, okay, here's what I think about work and what I think about success and what I think about money. We learn this through the language that they use and how they model through their behavior. Did your mom or dad, first of all, did they work? What did they do? Did they like it? Did they do it for a long time, short time? What kind of phrases and language did they use when they were talking about work, when they were talking about success, when they were talking about money? What kind of pressure or not did they put on you around work, success, and money? This is all really important because our thoughts, beliefs, and stories around these three concepts, around these three areas, really have a lot to do with our decision-making process as we're moving through the career transition process as well. So again, I'll wind this one up with the question, are your thoughts about work, success, and money limiting you or liberating you? Let's move on. What am I willing to let go to get what I want? When change is necessary, what typically comes up as a block for you? That's the secondary question that I want to ask. Again, when a change is necessary, what typically comes up as a block for you? When you talk about what you're willing to let go, here are some things that may come up. Are you willing to let go of mediocrity, boredom, excuses, getting in your own way, relationships that drag you down, people pleasing, right? So asking, what am I willing to let go to get what I want? Really give that some thought. The next question is kind of like a partner. What am I not willing to let go that may be blocking me from getting what I want? So when we answer this question, it may reveal what's a non-negotiable for you, if maybe you're having a challenge around that. So here are some things that people may be unwilling to let go. Maybe they're unwilling to let go where they live. In other words, they don't want to relocate. Maybe they're unwilling to let go friends who may be holding them back. They just feel like, the relationship is so important. I don't really know how to either, release the relationship or cut back on the connection. Some people are unwilling to stop listening to family members who may be unintentionally, and I say unintentionally, holding you back, because these people love us and they want the best for us. But sometimes we have a hard time shifting away from that. Maybe you're unwilling to, you're not willing to let go of your time or your effort or your resources to expand your education, and that's needed in order for you to get where you want to go. Maybe you're not willing to let go of your comfort zone. Maybe you want to stay comfortable. So you can fill in the blanks with that, but those two are very powerful questions as well. Let's move on. Number 9, what is my preferred lifestyle and job orientation? So lifestyle is where I like to encourage clients to start. Like, what is your desired lifestyle? And then what's the work that fits into that, right? So when you talk about lifestyle, think about culture, norms, where you live, preferred transportation. Do you want to commute? What's your job type? In-person, remote, hybrid? What's your preferred income based on your actual needs and wants, not some random, I want to make 6 figures. That's cool, right? But like taking a little time to really assess how much do I need? And you can continue to go above and beyond that by emergency funds and savings and retirement and college and all of that. But like, know what it is that you need and want that complements the lifestyle that you're looking for, your desired lifestyle. You know, your preferred experiences. How much vacation time do you want and need in the area of leisure, the environment that you want to be in, your health, activity, social, etc. So really think about what's your preferred lifestyle. And when we get to job orientations, as reflected in this image here, are you interested in a job, a career, or a calling? So a job, your focus is on financial award, and necessity rather than pleasure or fulfillment. A career, focus on advancement, increased responsibility and title, increased salary, other perks. Calling, your focus is on enjoyment. You know, you want to have a fulfilling, satisfying experience, socially useful work that makes a difference. And so this research, I think, came out in the 90s. And when I read this article from a sociology of work perspective, I just thought it was interesting. And when I ask clients this question, a lot of them will say, well, I'm kind of straddling career and calling. But to be able to just maybe just initially just make that decision, am I looking for a job? Am I looking for a career? Am I looking for a calling? That can be really interesting and help us to clarify and continue to focus. And our last question, do I have a clear vision of what I want next? So use the power of your imagination to envision your next work-life experience versus casting a wide net and waiting to be selected. Design your dream job. I often have an exercise that I recommend to clients to do that, where you look at what's most important to you: industry, location, company culture and size, desired organizational structure if you decide to work for someone else, on-site or remote, commute if it's, if on-site, your position, your title, your day-to-day responsibilities, income, benefits package, etc. So I encourage them to step outside of what they think reality is and really step into the dream circle. Go to the job boards, pick a number of different positions that really appeal or resonate to you, and just cut and paste and create your own ideal job description. That really changes a lot of people's, it shifts their perspective. Oh, wow, now I got a clearer sense of what it is that I really want. Whether you're going to get that or not, 100%, right? It certainly said, I know at one point I was working and using Harrison assessments years ago, and there was a statistic that said if we're 75% satisfied with our jobs or more, we're doing pretty well. So sometimes when I'm asking this question about your dream job, I'll ask individuals, how satisfied are you with your current position? And if it's anywhere way below that, then it's very clear that they're really ready to make a shift. But I love this image of this woman looking in the mirror. And I know in the movie Avatar, there's a phrase that's used, I see you. My question is here, do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Do you see where you're going next? Do you feel confident about that? And this is what we're trying to get to. Do I have a clear vision of what I want next? I've got a bonus question for you. Before I get to that, I love this quote. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Do you believe that? Using the power of your imagination to really clarify your vision is really important. Bonus question. Am I enjoying my career transition process? There are clients who move through this process and they may be a little bitter, resentful of what's happening in their current position, and they're ready, like I asked that initial question, are you running away from something or running to something? And so if you're going to be going through the career transition process, you don't want to be lugging a whole bunch of heavy energy into your process. You don't want to be on an interview and they ask you about your former employer and you're biting your lip and your tongue because you just want to let loose and say whatever you want to say. You don't want to carry any of that. You want to go through this process enjoying it. Learn how to be happy with what you have while you pursue what you want. I love this quote as it relates to the career transition process, because sometimes we're in our current position and we're trying to figure out what to do next. We may not be really happy with where we are, But I spend time talking through clients to help them to shift and see their current position in a different way, so that while they're prepping over here to transition into another space, they're able to not just tolerate, but find joy, because you took that job for a reason, right? There was something that was beneficial there. So really, sometimes it's just making a list of all the things that this current position allows you to do and what you enjoy about it, and that can help. Or doing a work-life diagnostic. I've had clients do that too, and I have an exercise around that. And then I love Dr. Seuss quotes. So from there to here and here to there, funny things are everywhere. Try to find the humor in all of this. Really focus on what's going well, as opposed to complaining. Complaining is a misdirected use of energy, especially in this process. So seek opportunities to laugh through the hits and misses as you move through this process. And don't just shoot for the destination. Life is not about destination points. Let's not reduce life to a set of destination points. Moments of accomplishment produce temporary highs. We have to remember this process is temporary. We're going to get to the other side of it, but enjoy it as you move through the process. So tips to uncover the questions. Take your time. Don't rush through the process. Write down your answers. Don't simply think about them. There's so much power in writing things down and seeing them. If you don't want to write them down, record them. As you're asking yourself the question, record your answer and go back and listen. The idea here is for you to hear or to see what it is that you're thinking, that you believe, that you're feeling, your story around this. So it's important that you either write it down or listen. So use a recorder if necessary. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Apples and oranges. Remember we talked about what lights you up. We talked about what you're great at. Those are that's unique to you, right? Compare yourself to the next upgraded version of you, you 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, however many times you've been through the career transition process. Stay curious, keep exploring, keep experiencing, keep learning. And ask for help, because sometimes we have blind spots. We can't see certain things because we're too close, we're in it. And having someone who's a neutral party who's invested in our success and helping us reach our goals is so important. So connect with coaches, mentors, supporters, etc. So that's where I want to transition now. But before I transition to Justice, I want to say this one thing. Better to spend time up front planning with the end in mind than regretting at the end how much time you wasted not planning up front. So it's really, really important to keep that in mind as you move through this process. And by asking these questions, hopefully it'll get you started. And these are just 10 of many. But I find that these are the ones that have risen to the top when I'm really having really good conversations that shift clients and help them to think about things in a different way. They're thought-provoking. So keep this in mind as you move forward. So I will transition to Justice, because when we start thinking about getting help with moving through these, that's where a really powerful coaching partnership comes in. And I'm going to let Justice take it from here.
Thank you so much, Robbi. And then just to reiterate for everyone that everything has been recorded and will be sent out. So you will have everything, so you can go back and watch any part of this whenever you want to. For those of you that have already started thinking through some questions, feel free to start writing them in the chat, and we will make sure to get back to them at the end. But I want to take a moment to speak to those of you that are ready to take your career transition to the next level. And I want to apologize. I'm going to have to say next slide, please, as Robbi is navigating that. So sorry about that, guys. But some of the services that our career coaching includes, and I'm not going to read through all of them. There's the classic things like resume and cover letter, but really we do anything and everything you need. Job application, interview, networking, navigating relationships, be during that process and afterwards, and really just anything that you need to get with your relationship with that coach, we're able to do for you. Next slide, please. And so how does it work is we have our own ALV method, and it's our proven system that has helped thousands of people transition successfully into careers and lives that they end up loving overall. Next slide, please. And it is broken down into 4 phases. And the first phase is the planning phase. And this is where you're uncovering your hidden self, those talents, those strengths, those non-negotiables, and really just laying everything out on the table as you look to navigate and find that perfect job, whatever that may be for you. And then as you go to phase 2, that's where you really start positioning yourself. And within that field, being revamping the resume, refreshing those interview skills to really just help you get that perfect job. And then once you have successfully gotten the job, it's the execution part. So this is where you maximize your compensation, negotiation strategies, comp packages, and everything that you need to be happy with this job that you've chosen, and really just prepare for success on the job as that next step where you're planning for that first 90 days. It doesn't just stop once you get the job, because that tends to be where people kind of put some blocks up. And that kind of is where our fourth part comes up. And phase 4 is the support. And this is where you're working towards those long-term goals. As Robbi mentioned, a lot of people will get burnt out and you get stressed and you really just want to get out of the situation and may end up in another situation that up front is not that bad, but as time goes on, you really kind of fall back into old habits. So now you're in a new role. How do we strategize future growth, developing leadership skills potentially, building relationships, and really just strengthening you as a person in this new role? And so that's really kind of the 4 phases that our career method goes off of. Next slide. And so in addition to the one-on-one coaching that we do, you do have bonus members only access. So you get added into our company's Slack page. And what's nice about that is it has all of our current clients as well as all of our coaches. So it's a really healthy environment we've been able to create where people post job descriptions, webinars, seminars, discussion posts, mindfulness tips and tricks, and just all sorts of things like that. But what else is really cool is that our coaches who are constantly creating new content, for example, we have these weekly free webinars where the topic of discussion is always changing, as well as they're always making and sharing blog posts. And if anybody was to ever post something that kind of caught your eye, you wanted to lean into or explore a little bit more about, you would then have the opportunity to substitute whoever your main coach is with any other coach on the team. So you can have like a celebrity session and you truly get access to our entire team of coaches should you ever want to explore any sort of niche skill set that someone else can bring to the table at any point in time. And then additionally, you have access to our e-coaching content. So these are going to be the supplementary things that you're going to work on in between your sessions just to really help tie up the bridge the gap in between sessions. So you're always constantly engaged and just thinking about forward betterment. So next slide, please. The bonus content and the access to that alone is valued at over $500, and that doesn't even include the one-on-one sessions that you do have. So in choosing to engage in the coaching membership with us, those packages start at $339 a month. So going off of that, if anyone is really interested, I'm going to redrop my consult link as well as our website link where you can read a little bit more about us overall and book a call with me if now gears have been turning and now you really want to have a conversation. I'm more than happy to speak with anybody. But for those of you that may not be ready for the one-on-one coaching and jumping into that at this moment in time, Robbi, next slide, please. We do have our ALV Career Method e-course, which is basically the entire method that you would work through in a one-on-one sessions with a coach on an online platform that you can kind of work through on yourself. So what's nice about this is you have 1 year access to this, and you got all of the information with all of the bonuses with the Slack page and all of the e-course modules and everything. And it's basically those 4 phases broken down over a year's worth of content that you get to go through at your own pace. So some people aren't ready to fully jump into the one-on-one coaching. So this does exist that you can jump into to kind of get your feet wet and kind of go from there. And then thank you, Jillian, for dropping the landing page to our website where you can go and read a little bit more in detail about the Career Method e-course. Next slide, please. And then, at the end of the day, become an ALV member, meet with your coach twice or 4 times a month. You do also have the e-course if you want to start with that. And there does exist potential to jump into their membership later on down the line. So with that being said, I think that's all I've got on my side in terms of that. I'm also going to go ahead and drop the link to our YouTube channel where you can see previously recorded webinars, as well as our Eventbrite where you can see upcoming ones that we do have on the books in the future. But with that being said, we can jump into questions and answers. I did see one. Do you have to be monthly for the coaching session, or is there an option to buy so many sessions? So we do a monthly membership basis of the sessions, Sarah, but you do have the opportunity to purchase one-off sessions if you need more during your months. And let me see if I missed any other questions. And while see if there's any questions written in the chat. If anyone has a question that they would like to come off of mute and ask Robbi, we more than welcome that.
Questions? I'd love to answer questions. I gave you a lot of questions to answer already, right? So you have a lot of questions to consider. But do you have any questions about that process and when you're moving through and thinking about some of these questions either on your own or in partnership with a coach, how that would work, how long did it take, any particular challenges that you have. I think I have two sessions coming up, I think one in October and one in November, where it's more open coaching, where it's related to one where you have no idea what you want to do, and the other one is I have so many ideas, I don't know which one to choose. So definitely look out for that, and we can certainly answer some of your more specific questions around that if you don't have any specifics today.
If no one has any questions, Robbi, would you like to leave us with some final thoughts then? And we'll just have a few moments back in our days.
Yeah, absolutely. As any of us are moving through the career transition process, it can be very overwhelming. Speaking to clients on a regular basis, everybody is at a different point, at a different position. They want different things. They have different challenges. Some of those are very similar, but then some of those are very unique to you. And the more willing you are to be introspective and to really dive deep and give yourself the time to figure that out, if it's going to take longer than what your lifestyle is kind of demanding at the time, then sometimes it's cool to maybe, if you've got to get out of that position, because some people, like I mentioned earlier, asking the question, are you running away from something or moving towards something? If you're trying to get out of a position, maybe a bridge position might be necessary so that it just kind of sustains you and gives you what you need. But then you can continue to work through this process so that you don't continue to carry what I call like the sludge. Sometimes there's this sludge that we just kind of carry with us, and we don't stop and address it. We just keep carrying it to the next position and the next position, and it causes challenges. So really give yourself time to go through the process and really honor yourself in that. Really shift your energy into a positive space as you're moving through the process, so that energetically, I'm certainly a big fan of attraction principles, that you attract more of where you're vibrating and what you're feeling. And if you're feeling really sludgy and low and resentful, and you're mad and you just want to get out of stuff, that's going to translate into that whole process as you're moving through it. So find a way to be lighter and to have more fun and not just look for the destination. Life isn't a set of destination points. We want to enjoy the journey. So that's what I'll leave you with.
Thank you, Robbi. And actually, we did get 2 questions in the chat as you were speaking. The first one says, I'm 3 to 5 years from retirement, but need to change jobs. Is there anything in particular I should be considering?
3 to 5 years from retirement. Think about, I don't like the word, I like your 3 to 5 years away from transitioning into your next experience. So think about what it is how you want to spend that time. How do you envision using that time? For you, maybe playing with the dream job exercise. Maybe your values have shifted, and maybe what you wanted and what was more important early on is different now. And I find as we go through different phases in our lives, different things are important. What I wanted at 20 is different than I want. And so as you're moving toward that phase where you're seasoned and you're transitioning into something else, most people I think Mark Freeman calls it Encore. It's a book that was written years ago, or your second act or third act, whatever it may be. A lot of people are looking for maybe a calling or something that's more fulfilling, where they're able to make a difference. And so make a determination with that. Like, what are you looking for? What's your job orientation preference, and what's your lifestyle preference? So start thinking about that, and then you can start planning and perhaps just start looking casually at some things that really attract you, and not just what's offered, but sometimes we live in a time of possibilities and opportunities where we can create opportunities. So think of something that you really want, and if you don't see it, maybe see if you can create it. I'm big about opportunities and possibilities and creating and designing the kind of work life that you want. So it is possible. Absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Thank you so much. And then we have one more question that says, is there a rough time limit you suggest to get through all the questions?
No. Remember the analogy that I had earlier about the car that I use when I'm talking to coaching clients, just to help them understand how I see the coaching partnership. The cruise control, you set that, you decide. So it depends on how much time you're willing to devote to that. So sometimes we'll have a conversation, and I mean me and a client, about this process. And how much time are you willing to devote to this each week? So we'll talk about scheduling and, okay, I can devote 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours, or however much you can devote each week. That's going to depend on you and how important it is for you to move from where you are to where you want to be. So if you devote more time each week, and sometimes say, well, what can an hour a week do? A lot, because you got 4 hours at the end of the month, 8 hours after 2 months. So it depends on what your runway is. That's another question that I typically ask clients. How long is your runway? And so I'll ask them, can you see yourself in this position 5 years from now? No. Can you see yourself in this position 3 years from now? No. A year from now? Maybe. 6 months from now? You know, just really helping them to understand what their runway is, because that helps you with the planning time. So if you got a year runway, then you can kind of plan and say, okay, I've got a year before I really want to exit this position and move into, make a career transition into my next experience. And so once you understand what your runway is, ask yourself that question, and feel it in your body. Like, how does it feel when I say I'm going to be here 3 years from now? It's like you want to go running. Okay, you got a shorter runway than that. So just think about what your runway is, and that'll help you with planning, and then know how much time you invest in doing that work is going to determine how long or short it's going to take.
Thank you so much. And then we have a question that says, any advice for reimagining your relationship to money? For example, I am building my business right now, not making any money, dependent on savings and my spouse's job. We are fine, but I feel so much guilt and shame about not bringing in money to our family.
The money thing is oftentimes deeply embedded, and we can have, obviously have conversations, but there are a couple resources. Your money or your life. I can't remember the author, but I know her name is Robin something. But your money or your life is an interesting resource. That's one that I have typically recommended to students, but there are other resources as well that you can take a look at. And I can certainly come up with 3 or 4 more that you can check out. But sometimes this money thing, because it's such a private thing, sometimes that's something that you work through on your own. But some of these resources do a really good job of providing exercises to help you to really explore your relationship with money. And I would start with that word association exercise that I suggested around money, just to identify whether any of those 3 feel heavy or feel light. And money for a lot of people feels heavy. And so if that's the case, try using one of these resources to help you. But you can certainly work through some of this in a coaching partnership as well.
Thank you so much. And with that, we've reached the end of our questions. So once again, thank you everyone for coming and joining us here today. Robbi, thank you, sir, for everything and the great content. And we hope to see everyone at a future event. But have a great rest of your day and weeks, everyone.
Excellent. Bye, everybody. Take care.